Yes, and that's right. Getting into the special interview with political historian Dr. Sishuwa Sishuwa. He's here to offer his sharp analysis on some of the latest happenings ahead of the August elections. Doc, good morning and welcome to the Red Hot Breakfast. We haven't had you on the show in a while. Good morning to you. How have you been?
Good morning, Peter, and good morning, listeners. I've been very well, and yes, we haven't spoken for a while, so I'm very happy to be back.
Doc, let's get started. We saw pockets of violence during the nomination of MPs, mainly involved MPs, and one of the casualties was Garry Nkombo, who ended up seeking medical treatment. What does this level of violence say about, the state of the democracy in the UPND as we go into this election?
Well, I think it says a number of things. First, it demonstrates the lack of respect for the freedom to participate in political affairs. As you know, participation is a fundamental principle of liberal democracy, and it's even a constitutional principle in our case. People, can participate in political life, in elections as voters or as candidates. And individuals who are unhappy that they were not adopted in their political organizations have the freedom to participate as candidates in elections by standing as independent candidates or indeed as a candidate on other platforms. So when you have what happened yesterday, where a member of the ruling party is prevented from exercising his right to participate by standing as a candidate, it makes a very sad reading about the culture, the lack of internal party democracy within the UPND. Secondly, I think that it demonstrates how violence is embedded in the UPND. We often talk about how bad the PF cadres were, how violent they were, but the UPND cadres are not angels. They have shown us over the last 4.5 years that they are also violent. And it was sad to see the cadres beating, Garry Nkombo. But when you actually look back over the last 4 years, you see UPND cadres have been doing this, without consequence. They have been beating opposition politicians. I remember some Socialist Party, I think people were beaten during one of the by-elections. So opposition politicians have been treated much worse by UPND cadres, and usually in full view of the police as well. So the only difference is that the person on the receiving end of injustice and police inaction is this time around a member of the governing party. And that's why you have seen this condemnation. Much of it focuses on Garry as a person rather than on the lawlessness that he has produced this kind of thing.
What do you make of the reaction from the president regarding this incident? He called on the police to make sure that they arrest the perpetrators.
Well, I think that sounds like a hollow attempt to really condemn this thing, because when you think about it, the person who was leading those cadres reportedly works at State House, and so you could actually even say that those attacks are sponsored by State House, because there's no way a worker of the president could have done what he did without the blessing of his boss. So when you see a president, for example, coming out to attack that, start thinking, oh, is this an attempt to simply cover himself up? And second, Liswaniso, I think the UPND National Youth Chairperson, in the presence of the president, warned UPND candidates or UPND members that if you are not adopted in the ruling party, do not attempt to stand as an independent candidate, because you are going to come for you. The president never repudiated those remarks by his National Youth Chairperson. He never distanced himself. So when you see cadres do what they did to Garry yesterday, for example, you get a sense that they are implementing what the National Youth Chairperson said, and which the president, through inaction or silence, endorsed. So you can't come around tomorrow and condemn what the cadres have done when you all along were very happy with this kind of message that produced the outcome. And the other final point, I think, is that, if you look at the president's conduct in relation to other acts of violence, you realize that the president does not hate violence, especially when the culprits are members of his inner circle or UPND cadres. Remember the case of J.J. Banda, the former, Putauke independent member of parliament. He was attacked and abducted by people who, according to J.J., included Clayson Hamasaka, Levi Ngoma, and I think Trevor Mwinde. Two of those three people work with the president at State House, just like the person who was leading the attacks yesterday. To date, the president has never condemned the attacks on JJ Banda, nor demanded that the people who were responsible should be arrested. If you remember, even the police has never summoned any of those people to say, you come for interviews. At least you should have a decency to say, oh, a victim has accused Sishuwa that he was responsible for this and that crime. The very least that you can do as police is to invite those people. Or if I'm working for the president, the president should drop me so that it doesn't seem like he's covering me up. So when you hear the president saying this kind of thing, like, no, this is unacceptable, it's very difficult to believe that message, because his conduct over the past 4 years in relation to acts of violence committed by members of his inner circle and the cadres themselves have not attracted the kind of attention that you'd expect from the president, which is to condemn attacks on anyone, regardless of the perpetrators or the victims, for example. But he hasn't done that, and it should not be like that.
Doc, I want to circle back on the key suspect in this Nkombo case. Like you've put it, he's been identified as somebody that's close to the president, President Hakainde Hichilema. How can you describe the kind of relationship that exists between the president and Garry Nkombo?
Well, from outside, it looks very, very bad. And I, like many Zambians, I would like to know the source of that friction that we see between the president and Garry Nkombo. The way the president has treated Garry Nkombo is disgraceful and disgusting, to say the least. First he kicked Garry out of cabinet. He was Minister of Local Government. If you remember, even when he was appointing cabinet, Garry was one of the last people that were appointed. It's almost as if it was an afterthought. So it's like he was reluctant to appoint him to cabinet. And then he kicked him out of cabinet. We don't know for what reason, because he has never given any reason. There are rumors that no, it has to do with maybe corruption or something like that. If you are removing somebody for corruption, the correct thing to do after you remove them is to make sure that they are handed to the investigative wings for possible prosecution.